I just realized that we're almost to chapter 1, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up this introduction. This is just giving us a background of himself, his family life, who he was, and what he did for the U.S. military. So he reported at 0400 hours, and what he learned during the time he spent with that briefing team is what led him on. Well, I'm going to read, okay? What I learned during the time I spent with that briefing team is what led me on my 18-year search that has culminated in the writing of this book. I was later given another upgraded clearance in the crypto category and served as the designated SPECAT, SPECAT operator when I was on watch in the command center. On the day that I learned that the Office of Naval Intelligence had participated in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and that it was the Secret Service agent driving the limo that had shot Kennedy in the head, I went AWOL. With no intention of ever returning, my good friend Bob Swan is the one who talked me into going back. Later, on June 1st, 1972, the eve of my wedding, I told Bob everything that I knew about the UFOs, Kennedy's assassination, the Navy, the secret government, the coming Ice Age, Alternatives 1, 2, and 3, Project Galileo, and the plan for the New World Order. I believe it was all true then, and I believe it is all true now. I must warn you, however, that I have found evidence that the secret societies were planning as far back as 1917 to invent an artificial threat from outer space in order to bring humanity together in a one-world government, which they call the New World Order. I am still searching for the truth. I firmly believe that this book is closer to that truth than anything ever previously written. I attempted to leak information to a reporter after my discharge. I was forced off a cliff by a black limo in the hills of Oakland. Two men got out and climbed down to where I lay covered in blood. One bent down and felt my carotid pulse. The other asked if I was dead. The nearest man said no, but he will be. The other replied, good, then we don't have to do anything else. They climbed up and drove off. I succeeded in climbing up the bank where I waited until found. A month later, I was forced into another accident by the same limo. This time, I was to lose my leg. Two men visited me in the hospital. They only wanted to know if I would shut up or if the next time should be final. I told them that I would be a very good little boy and that they needn't worry about me anymore. Under my breath, I swore to spill the beans as soon as I could figure out how to do it without unit getting hurt again. It took 16 years, $27,000, a computer, and a lot of envelopes, but now everyone knows. I went back to school after leaving the Navy and obtained a degree in photography. I served as the chief instructor of the Coastal School of Deep Sea Diving, the head of the Mixed Gas Deep Saturation Diving Department, and the underwater photography instructor for the College of Oceaneering, admissions representative for Airco Technical Institute, assistant director of Adelphi Business College, executive director of Adelphi Business College, national marketing coordinator of the United Education and Software, executive director of Pacific Coast Technical Institute, and executive director of National Technical College. I also owned and operated Absolute Image Gallery and studio of fine art photography. In the spring of 1988, I saw a magazine that made reference to a document discovered by the research team of Moore, Shandera, and Friedman that outlined the government's knowledge of a downed saucer, dead alien bodies, and an operation called Operation Majestic 12. I knew that Moore and Friedman were government agents and that the document was a fraud. I had never heard of Shandera. I heard this because I had seen a list of agents who were to initiate a contingency plan called Majestic that would lead investigators off the track when such a need arose. I decided that it was time for me to enter the arena and expose the cover-up and the disinformation. First, it was necessary to convince the known agents that I was just a kook who didn't really know anything. I prepared some bogus information, mixed it with some true information, and passed it to Moore and Friedman through Jim Spicer, the operator of a computer BBS network called Paranet. Spicer, who told that the information was to go only to Moore or Friedman, no one else was to see it. I wanted to buy time by convincing these agents to report me to their case officers as harmless, thus allowing me to get the real information out to the public. None of that information was intended to go public. Spicer turned out to be working with Moore, however, and had posted the files on the computer networks. Spicer then went to Los Angeles, conferred with Moore for 3 days, and then returned and barred me from the Paranet system. Friedman called and elicited my address, the name and address of my employer, and a lot of other personal information. I knew that I was being checked out through the intelligence network and played along. About 1 week after talking to Friedman, 2 Defense Investigative Service agents showed up at my home and confiscated all of my floppy disks. The only thing that prevented them from taking my computer was the fact that it was an XT with no hard drive. I knew that my plan had worked because they didn't take me. With the help of Annie and Annie is his wife, and a few very close and trusted friends, I prepared the real information as true and correct as I could remember, and together we did a mailing that all total cost me $27,000. We sent the packages to people all over the world. That is what prevented the government from arresting me or harming me. Any move by them would be interpreted as total confirmation of everything that I had revealed. I also uploaded information onto computer bulletin boards all across the nation. At the same time, I publicly stated that Moore, Shandera, and Friedman are government agents and that the Eisenhower briefing document is a fraud. I was attacked by everyone. They insisted that Moore, Shandera, and Friedman were above reproach. I resigned effective April 15, 1989. From the college where I was the executive director after Jamie Shandera was seen poking around the grounds. That story is included later in this book. The loss of income was a serious blow. Stan Barrington, the head of the college security department, came to our aid. Stan gave us $5,000 to help out. I was deeply moved by his faith and trust in me, and so I gave him 24% of whatever was to come out of my efforts down the line. Neither of us ever expected much, and so far we have not been wrong. I have, however, paid Stan back his money, and now whatever he earns is extra. Stan is in charge of printing information and the sale of my papers and tapes. Stan Barrington is my only authorized representative. Moore was proved to be an agent when, by his own admission, on July 1st, 1989, he stated that he had participated in spying on fellow researchers, had changed documents, had put out disinformation, and had helped run a scam on Paul Benowitz that had resulted in Mr. Benowitz being confined to a mental institution. Moore stated that he had been recruited by an intelligence agency and that he knew he had been recruited. He was a witting agent. No one acknowledged that I had been right. From that point on, my Annie and I were followed and harassed. Death threats began showing up on our answering machine. The phone would ring several times during the night, but no one would reply when we answered. Sometimes a man would deliver another death threat. Government cars would park in front, and well-dressed men would watch the house. The strangest people began to show up at our door, sometimes in the middle of the night. I purchased a 380 automatic for Annie and a 9mm for me. Excuse me. I taught Annie how to shoot, and she will not hesitate to kill anyone who attempts to harm me, her, or our little daughter. Annie and Pooh, Dorothy's nickname, are the lights in my life. Annie and I were married on July the 4th, 1989. Pooh was born on May 30th, 1990. My most touching memory of Annie is of the time after 12 hours of labor when we were finally in the living room. She had taken no drugs. She had not been given a spinal tap. She did everything naturally. She was drained of energy and was experiencing great pain. She was numb. After a really hard push, she looked up at me with all the innocence and trust of a little child and asked, "Did the baby come yet?" It was very hard for me to tell her that the baby had not been yet born, but that is what I did. She seemed to waver for a moment, but only a moment, and it quickly regained her composure. I could see the love in her eyes as she looked up at me. I squeezed her hand. She took a deep breath and pushed Pooh's little head out into the world. The doctor suctioned the baby's mouth. Then Annie gave her all, a push that seemed to come from her very soul, and little Dorothy popped out, announcing her presence with a great cry. I am so proud of Annie. She is my hero, and Pooh is always and forever my friend. And that's a picture of Annie and her Dorothy, their daughter. Now, I'm almost to chapter 1. Give me one moment. At one point, I became very upset with the intimidation. I went out to the government car at the curb. I showed the man in the car my 9mm pistol, and I told him that we were fed up with the intimidating tactics. I told him that if he or anyone else wanted to know something about me, they should come to the house, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and I would be happy to tell them anything that they want to know. I informed him that if any further attempt was made to harass me or my family, I would not hesitate to use my pistol. I then walked behind his car and wrote the license number down. He started the car, drove off, and we have not detected any overt signs of surveillance since that day. They did not give up on us. No one knew the location of our new house when we moved to Arizona. However, when we drove into the driveway, a government car showed up right behind us. The man got out and said he was lost and wanted to know who lived here. I asked him why he wanted to know. He stated that he was a census taker. He said it was his job to ensure that no one out here in the country was left out of the census. He asked my name, and I told him to get off the property and not to ever come back. He protested, but left when he saw that I was serious. I merely asked Annie to get my pistol out of the car. Now many people would say that I was paranoid in this instance until they discover that the census takers do not drive government cars. And I know this is true because I used to take the census. Now, I was at the post office one morning when a country sheriff's deputy asked the clerk at the window next to the one where I was buying stamps if William Cooper had rented a box. I smiled as the clerk handed my rental agreement, and he copied the information. He didn't learn anything, as we live in the country where there are no addresses. The form had only Stolen Boulevard listed, as a lot of people live on Stolen Boulevard. We have been taken advantage of by every crooked con man, TV producer, script writer, author, and flim-flam expert that there is in this country. I have learned that the TV and print media reporters and producers that I have met are all a pack of liars. They are not objective and don't give a damn about the truth. The only really open media left to the public is talk radio, and even talk radio won't discuss certain subjects. My material has been copied, changed, and even plagiarized. A lot of people have used my material to make money without my knowledge or permission. Bless you. A Hollywood producer wanted to buy the exclusive rights to my story for $1. Bill Hamilton begged me to let him include my material in his book entitled Alien Magic. He pretended to be a friend and I let him. I asked for no money and he offered none. His entire book consists of other people's material. Now he accuses me of stealing his information. Bill Hamilton turned out to be just another UFO flake. I have since learned that I am not the only person of whom he has taken advantage. The most damaging scam was perpetuated by two old has-been actors turned conmen named Michael Kalin and Douglas Dean. I doubt seriously that you will ever remember either one. Kalin was a regular in the cheapy 10 Beach Blanket movies, and Dean never got beyond big parts and chorus lines. I got involved with them when another actor named Bruce Reed called and asked if I would consent to meet with him and a friend who preferred to remain anonymous. I agreed that they could come to the house where we could talk on familiar turf. I was not eager to meet with someone that I did not know, and especially with an anonymous person away from familiar surroundings. Reed and friend showed up at my home, and the friend turned out to be Michael Kalin. They told me that they had read my material and wanted to help. What a joke that statement turned out to be. They told me that they knew how to get me in front of millions of people where I could deliver my message. Kalin was slick. He told me he was only interested in helping spread information, but talked me into signing a 5-year management contract that gave him full 20% of the gross of all my earnings, no matter what the source. He swore that if he didn't show results within 6 months, he would tear up the contract. The first thing Kalin did was shaft his partner, Bruce Reed. He cut Reed out of the action to prevent me from finding out that he had done it, only to get Reed's half of the 20%. Kalin told me that Bruce was a drug dealer. Kalin said that the public would find out eventually, and Reed's drug involvement would damage me. Everything Kalin told me about Reed turned out to be a lie. Stan Barrington called me next, wanting to know why I was trying to dump him. I didn't know what he was talking about. It turned out that Kalin was trying to force Stan into giving up his 24% so that Kalin could form a 50-50 partnership with me. I told Stan that I had no intention of dumping him. I told him that his 24% was his, that he could keep it, sell it, or give it away, and that he did not need my permission. Stan felt much better after that conversation and told Kalin to go fly a kite. At that point, Kalin began working on me to get rid of Stan. I refused. I also told him that he had nothing invested and therefore did not warrant anything. His job was to manage according to our contract. Douglas Dean entered the picture at the January 7, 1989 lecture that I gave at the Showboat Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Kalin brought him to videotape the lecture so that we would have a tape to sell for those thousands of people who pleaded with us to produce a tape. The agreement was that he would tape the event and the tapes would belong exclusively to me. In return, if the tapes turned out good, Dean would get a contract to produce future tapes. The tapes were terrible, and I told both Dean and Kalin that I did not want tapes of that poor quality being sold to anyone. They did it anyway, and behind my back, and begun the process of stealing my master tapes from all my other lectures. At the same time, Kalin drained all the business account. He borrowed $1,400 from Stan to produce tapes and then kept the money and the tapes. A producer in Germany booked me to do a lecture in that country. To secure the agreement, he sent $3,000 to be used for two first-class tickets, and as a guarantee that when I got there, I would not be canceled. The producer canceled when a German postal strike prevented him from advertising the event. Kaylin kept the man's $3,000, and I did not find out about that until after I had fired Kaylin. At my lecture in San Diego at the Whole Life Expo, I found out that Dean was selling tapes and asking people to make checks out to Need to Know Productions, a phony company. I immediately fired Dean. I informed Kaylin that we were to do no more business with him whatsoever. I discovered that Kaylin was telling me that we were having tapes duplicated in Hollywood for $15 per tape, but in reality, Dean was doing it on VCRs at his home in Arizona. I asked Kaylin to return all of my master tapes for all my lectures. He refused, and I fired him. When I got rid of Kaylin, he had stolen everything that we had. We were literally left penniless. He was in possession of all of our master tapes from all of my lectures. We were broke and homeless at that point. If it had not been for a few good friends in Minnesota, we would not have survived. We would be in the streets today. Kaylin and Dean continue to injure us by selling tapes from our lectures. We get nothing from those sales. They are the most despicable con men and thieves that you can imagine. I paid a visit to Dean's home one Saturday morning to ask him for any master tape. He was not home, and after a polite conversation with his handyman, I returned to my home. A few days later, the sheriff department called and asked me if I had been to Dean's home that same Saturday. I told him that I had. He asked me if I had tried to break in Dean's home, and I told him that I had not. He thanked me, and that was the end of it. I had no idea what it was all about until I was served with a restraining order. It seems that Dean's guilty conscience had made him afraid that I would return. He slit his own tires, made a report to the sheriff that I had done it, and then procured a restraining order from the local court. I have never been questioned or accused by the police or sheriff other than what I have already disclosed. I believe that their goal from the very beginning was to try and destroy my efforts at educating the American people. They damn near succeeded. Okay, y'all, so we got through the introduction, and it let us know a little bit more about who William Cooper was. He served for U.S. Naval and Air Force, and he gave us a little history from his family and home life. So what I'll be reading next is chapter 1, and we'll be digging into some of this information he released in his book before his death. Peace and blessings. Enjoy your day, and I'll see you or talk to you later.